What's up, Hokie Nation, and welcome into this edition of Talking with Teel, presented by State Farm. Is Shane Beamer a realistic option all of a sudden for Virginia Tech? Mike Norvell, for now, is sticking at Florida State, and what else is going on in college football? All that and much more coming up on this edition of Talking with Teel, which starts right now. And we record on Tuesday, October 21st, 2025 from the Tech Solutions Studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Remember to like, subscribe, and refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, Carter Hill. To my left is our senior staff writer, Andy Bitter. Across the way is our managing editor, Mr. David Cunningham. Nick Brown, our director of media, is producing behind the scenes. And as always, we welcome in the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer, David Teel. David, how are you? Good to see you.
Buddy.
Good morning. Hopefully everybody enjoyed everybody's bye week, except for Teel, who's at ODU JMU seeing a barn burner, and we're going to get to that later in the show. But I'm going to start with Shane Beamer. And I never thought we'd get to this point in late October where we're actually realistically talking about Shane Beamer. Brad Crawford of CBS Sports puts out this report on Saturday afternoon about, is the decision easy for Shane Beamer of Virginia Tech? And Teel, this whole time, the big question has been, would Shane Beamer actually leave for Virginia Tech? I still don't know if that's even realistic. But the question I'm going to ask you is, should Virginia Tech actually want Shane Beamer? If you're a Virginia Tech fan, should you hire Shane Beamer, in your opinion, if the opportunity presented itself?
That is a multi-pronged question, Carter. And we'll get to this when we delve into some other candidates, too. The last thing Virginia Tech should want to do is hire Shane Beamer or anyone else because it's a fallback and an escape from something. If Shane Beamer wants the job at Virginia Tech, and I am a Virginia Tech administrator, be it Whit Babcock or anyone on that search committee, or Tim Sands or John Rokovich, he's got to convince me that he wanted this job from the beginning. Not because he's having a down season at South Carolina, not because all of a sudden the fan base is a little unruly, but that Virginia Tech is where he wants to be. Now, if he convinces them of that, then the conversation, I think, becomes serious, and then Virginia Tech has to compare his credentials to others. Do I think it's a no-brainer? Absolutely not. Because you're looking at a coach who, by the end of the season, maybe 3 or 4 games over 500 for his tenure at South Carolina. He's recruited well, yes, and he's had some really good seasons. But this one seems to be delving into really disappointing territory. And wow, the next 3 games. 3 consecutive top 10 opponents, the last 2 on the road. Alabama at home this week to start it. It's going to be a grind for the Gamecocks.
Teel, do you believe this report that's out there on 247? That this is just a nice, tidy, easy way for Shane to... I mean, you've known Shane even longer than I have. I feel like we know him pretty well. I think we've had conversations with him about his alma mater and whether he'd ever want to coach at a place like this. Do you believe that would even be looking at a place like this?
Virginia Tech is obviously, in a way, it's not where it is where he grew up. And it's certainly where he grew up as a college student and a high school student. And then later on, as a coach. So obviously there are some heartstrings here. But I take Shane at his word when he said, and he said it again this week, that South Carolina was his dream job. And he emphasized, and I think he did the same with you, Andy, when you talked to him in preseason. When I went down to Columbia, he could not emphasize more how much he and his family love Columbia. Now, does this season change that calculus? We don't know that. Difficult seasons are very challenging for coaches and their families, especially ones that started with such promise as this one did on the heels of last year's top 15 finish.
I always think it's interesting too, and people are always like, well, it's a nice, escape hatch for a coach like that. It's like, that doesn't happen often. Like John Calipari, but that's an accomplished coach who's been at several stops, who's won national championships before. That felt like a different situation than Shane, who is trying to make a name for himself at his first place. And certainly, when Calipari leaves Kentucky, he'd won a national championship at Kentucky. I believe so, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. This was an accomplished coach leaving a place where he had, great memories, and obviously the greatest memory, winning a title there. I just don't look at Shane's situation and go, he would walk away from this and be like, we didn't get over the hump at South Carolina. Like, he desperately wants to get over the hump there, I feel like.
Right. And Andy, no coach wants to walk away voluntarily on a down note. They want to exit on top. Now, whether that's a national championship is a different conversation, but they want to go out on a good note. We all do. We all want to call our own shot. And I agree with you. He desperately wants to make it work there. And are the administrators and the fans at South Carolina so impatient that this one season is going to turn them make them sour on Shane? I would hope not. Might Shane have to make a change at the offensive coordinator position? That might have to happen. Mike Shula has certainly not distinguished himself, and as we saw on Twitter, the students aren't very happy with Mike Shula as offensive coordinator.
Yeah, he still has a card to play, Shane does.
Yeah.
They got rid of the offensive line coach in the middle of the season, but you can fire the offensive coordinator and frame that as, all right, we're going to get this thing fixed in the offseason. The other thing is, if you're South Carolina, isn't the next coach just sort of going to be more of the same here? I mean, this has been what the end of the Spurrier run into the Will Muschamp era, into the Shane Beamer era. That's a tough job. And as much as you'd be like, you get a new guy in there and this guy's going to turn it around, you're still going to play 6, 7, sometimes 8 ranked teams, like highly ranked teams too. I just think, perhaps that is the ceiling for that program. Is every now and then they pop up, but then it's going to be, a question for bowl eligibility every now and then.
David, on the Shane topic, what would be your biggest question about Shane Beamer being the head coach at Virginia Tech?
Oh, I don't know if there's just one. You're always interested in staff. He'd have to be comfortable with the specter of living and coaching in a town where there's literally a statue of his dad. Shane told me during the off season, Coach Beamer in Blacksburg will always be my dad. How does he come to grips with that if he indeed wants to pursue the opening at Tech? And guys, I think we all know how the game works. And again, I'm taking Shane at his word, and maybe I'm naive in this thinking. When he was asked about it this week, and his response was typically lengthy for Shane, and he mentioned, I have no idea where this story came from. He may not, but I think we all can. This is all agent driven. This is how the game works. And agents want their client's name out there so they can garner as much leverage with the current employer as possible. And Shane's agent is a master of it, and that's Jimmy Sexton, who also, by the way, represents James Franklin, who also represents Nick Saban, and who, according to the Twitters, was standing on the ESPN set while James Franklin was talking with Nick Saban and others on game day Saturday.
I think the fair rebuttal about the potential of Shane Beamer being the next head coach of Virginia Tech is, when is Virginia Tech going to move away from the Beamer era? Obviously, that's not necessarily something you have to do. But at some point, is Virginia Tech willing to adapt and move forward? That would be my rebuttal. The other thing about Brad Crawford's story, which I think there could be some accuracy there, I watched this podcast with Colby Crawford on 247 last night. He mentioned Shane Beamer is only going to be the next head coach of Virginia Tech if they're willing to pay him around $8 million. Well, I think they're going to be able to pay around $8 million. I don't think that's going to be the issue. I just think it's going to be a matter of whether or not he's the right fit right now for Virginia Tech. I don't know if you guys would agree or disagree, but that was kind of my interpretation of the whole thing.
Can Virginia Tech do better than Shane Beamer?
I think
Maybe.
it can.
I think I think they might be able to. I think they owe it to themselves to figure it out and answer that question. And again, we're not having this conversation if South Carolina is 6-2, or what are they, 3-4? If they're 5-2, and that's what would give me pause. Is from all accounts, Shane Beamer's not leaving South Carolina if they're having a successful season. So you're taking a coach for the wrong reason.
Yeah, I would agree, and I think, Carter, you made the point. I think Virginia Tech can do better. Who that is, I'm not really sure, but I think Shane, obviously he fits in so many different ways, but at the same time, I'm still a little skeptical. It's not like he's had consistent success, and I don't know. I like Teel just said, wrong reasons. Like, you hire a coach, not that the escape hatch would be the reason, but you hire a coach coming off of a not great year, and it's like, we could be hiring a coach coming off a 10-win season. You know what I mean?
Right.
That doesn't mean that that's how the tenure is going to go, because Justin Fuente was coming off great seasons. But you hire the coach. If you hire the coach for the wrong reasons, you might get stuck. So I don't know.
There's always a feeling of you want to hire a coach on the upswing. That said, if we were having this conversation last December, and you're going, man, should Virginia Tech hire Shane Beamer? And he's coming off a 9-3 season. They're on the cusp of the playoff. You'd be like, yeah. Or you go, should you hire James Franklin, who all of a sudden his stock is down because Penn State was so bad last year. He was like a drive away from making the national title game last year. So success is fleeting in college football. You're going to have ups and downs. And, Dan Mullen is not – Virginia Tech's got to hire Dan Mullen. It's like, you weren't saying that when he was getting fired from Florida.
Right.
You got to hire Lane Kiffin. He's a hot commodity. It's like when he was at Florida Atlantic and trying to pick up the pieces of his career. So these coaches have ups and downs, and I feel like I keep coming back to it. I want to find a coach that has sort of weathered the storm before, that has had success, has had failure, has bounced back at that place, pulled out of that. That's why I always go back to Matt Campbell. I like Matt Campbell. I don't know if he's a candidate. I don't know if he would want to leave Iowa State, specifically for Virginia Tech. But he's had the ups and downs at Iowa State. He's been in a place that doesn't have the most resources, and he's sort of weathered that, and he's won with different groups. That's why I feel like it's more valuable finding something like that than you're catching a coach on the upswing right now.
I think Pat Fitzgerald was probably another good example of that too.
Absolutely. Pat Fitzgerald and Dave Clawson, David. And guys, if you will permit me, and Andy probably knows where I'm going with this, because he and I have texted a little bit about it. It tickles me when I read or hear people, and it's not just about Virginia Tech, it's any job opening. School X needs to hire Coach Y. That's not how it should work. Virginia Tech, if football means as much at Virginia Tech as they purport it to be, and if they are truly going to invest all this money in the program, then by God, they owe it to themselves. And this is why it's not necessarily a bad thing that there is a committee and that there are board members sitting on that committee, because they owe it. No Zoom interviews. Well, Zoom interviews may be preliminary, but they need to sit in the room with the finalists and have deep conversations and look them in the eye and take their pulse and notice their body language. This is a story that Andy can appreciate. Mike Tomlin spent one season as the defensive coordinator of Andy's Minnesota Vikings. And that was in 2006. And word got out that he was going to interview for the Steelers job. And I'd known Mike for a long time. Newport News guy, Denby High School, played at William and Mary for Jimmy Laycock. So I texted him, and he called me. And I said, this is good for you. This will be a good experience for you to get out there and interview for a head coaching job. And he said, wait, you don't think I'm getting this job, do you? I said, no, I don't. Do you? He said, hell yes, I do. And here's what happened. He went in there, and to hear the Rooneys tell it, Mike took literally a manifesto with him as to not how he would run a team, how he would run the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's how much he wanted the job. That's how prepared he was. And if Shane Beamer or James Franklin or any candidate, they need to come before that committee and have a plan, not for running a program, for running Virginia Tech football.
Well, thanks for bringing up that Vikings dig on you there, Teel. Mike Tomlin, Brian Billick, Tony Dungy, all former Vikings coordinators who went on to win Super Bowls with other teams as head coaches. Vikings still have not won a Super Bowl there, so that was pretty painful. Just jumping ahead on this thing, because I thought that was a good transition here. Speaking of coaches, Virginia Tech should hire. Seems a strong push for James Franklin. I don't know if you saw the college game day rehabilitation tour that he had on that thing.
I listened on my drive to Harrison.
Shockingly, did not come out and announce he was going to be the coach of the Hokies. Like, what is wrong with people? What is wrong with people? What do we now that we've had like a week now, sort of gain some clarity on James Franklin's situation? He sounds very much like a guy who wants to coach this year. Doesn't sound like he wants to sit off or sit out and go to media or whatever it is. How serious of a possibility do you think he is for a place like Virginia Tech?
It depends on what James Franklin wants. What his family might want in terms of a place to live, how he views the potential of Virginia Tech with the new investment and the path to the college football playoff. Franklin has some West Coast ties. Would UCLA be appealing? I think Virginia Tech's a better job than UCLA, but maybe Westwood in Los Angeles is a more appealing place for him and his family to live. Gainesville, Florida, all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, it is, as we all expected, actually open. James Franklin has succeeded in the SEC at Vanderbilt. With Florida's resources and infrastructure, you would think he could do even better with the Gators at the Swamp. There may be some other jobs that open that he would find appealing. But surely, as we've talked about before, it would be malpractice if Virginia Tech didn't at least reach out to gauge any potential interest from Franklin and Comrade Sexton.
My thought on Franklin would be, if Virginia Tech is serious about Franklin, it should move quickly. It should try to, because right now, Florida State is not open. Could be.
Yeah.
Wisconsin's not open.
Could Auburn?
Should be.
Should be.
Wisconsin grad here speaking. Should be. Auburn's not open.
Yeah.
Auburn's going to open.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody has much sympathy for Hugh Freeze. On that
No.
I'll miss the Lane Kiffin Hugh Freeze interplay. How's the golf game's looking great, coach, and stuff like that. Lane Kiffin is a national treasure, and I hope he stays at Ole Miss and doesn't go to Florida.
Amen. Preach.
All these jobs could come open and could be very attractive to a coach of James Franklin's pedigree. So, right now, Florida is the better job that's out there. Maybe they're going bigger fish hunting than James Franklin, possibly. I mean, if you're a school like Florida, you can aim higher than somebody like that. If you're a school like Virginia Tech, I think Franklin might be the top-notch name that you could possibly get in this cycle.
Oh yeah, the top-notch resume. Virginia Tech is not going to do better than James Franklin's resume. But again, James Franklin would have to convince the folks at Virginia, this is where I want to be, and maybe it is. Maybe he views it in that light and sees the potential and sees the path to the playoff that the ACC presents. And perhaps he's somewhat humbled by the experience in Penn State and would communicate to any prospective employer, this is how I might do things differently as I approach my third head coaching position.
Well, I'll say it this way. I think the longer he is not hired to a place, the less chance it becomes Virginia Tech. Because more jobs will become open, and as this market intensifies, I think it becomes a lot tougher for a place like Virginia Tech to stand out.
Could you throw LSU in there too? Could LSU actually open?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe Brian Kelly, takes the parachute and goes to Penn State, back up into Big Ten country up there.
I mean, at this point, guys, we have jumped the shark. It is open season. Anything is possible at this point. If James Franklin can go from leading Oregon in overtime to a couple of weeks later, the unemployment line, and if Mike Norvell can go from 13-0 in 2023 to less than 2 years later having a 9-game ACC losing streak, and his AD coming out and saying, well, we're not going to make a change in the season. We'll evaluate come November. Really, anything is possible. That Florida State win over Alabama in week one, let's relate this to Virginia Tech. It may be the biggest outlier that we have seen since 2014 when the Hokies went to Columbus, beat Ohio State. The Hokies end up with their first ever losing ACC record. Ohio State goes on to win the national championship. And who meets in the following season's opener? Ohio State and Virginia Tech. And oh, by the way, who does Florida State open up with next season? That would be Alabama. The symmetry is perfect.
Whenever I see a tweet that begins with Florida State decision makers, I'm in. Just whatever the rest of the tweet is, just let me hear it. Whatever crazy stuff that they're doing now, you know that they're going to do something crazy.
There's no way he's going to get another year, right? I mean, I know the buyout's huge, but they lost to Stanford this weekend. And to Teal's point,
and it wasn't close. It wasn't close.
Well, the finish was awesome. I don't know if you guys stayed up to watch that game.
I fell asleep.
The finish was insane. But they lost to Stanford.
Yeah. I feel like David, sorry. Norvell, Fickle, Freeze, I think they're all gone. I think they are. And I'm surprised two of them are still here. I think Freeze could still play his way out of it a little bit. I don't see Fickle, my goodness.
When's the last time they scored? Serious question.
They have there's some promotion at Wisconsin that for every point they have discounted gas. And
the gas prices are off the charts.
So somebody tweeted thanks to Luke Fickle for another week of full priced gas. It's so bad. Getting shut out by Iowa 37-0.
That's too good.
Is worse than losing at home to Ohio State 34. Ohio State's great. They're the defending national champs. They're number one in the country. They were going to beat down Wisconsin. Losing to Iowa that badly? Iowa can't score. And they put up 37 points in Wisconsin that did not score back. And now Wisconsin has to go to Oregon this week, followed by Washington, followed by a trip to Indiana. I mean, part of me is saying that they're not firing him now because they just don't want to put this on an interim coach. They're just like, you know what, Fickle, you're going to wear this. You're going to wear the rest of the season, and then they'll move on from that. But logically, it does not make sense in my mind that they have not made a move yet. And Florida State feels like the same way. I mean, TLD, are you surprised Florida State hasn't moved yet?
Yeah, as rash and as crazy as those folks are, yes, I'm quite surprised. Maybe, and now, Andy, I'm not familiar with the language in Norvell's contract. Is it a money-saving deal? Are they already out there telling agents, yes, the job's going to come open. We're just trying to save a few $1,000,000 on the buyout? That's quite possible. But this would be, how many coaches in a row that the Noles have whiffed on. And I'm not sure it bodes well for Michael Alford's future as the athletic director there. Florida State, those schools that are, and much like South Carolina, those schools that are located in state capitals with proximity to politicians, it can get really, really interesting at those institutions. And Florida State is the epitome of that.
Norvell's buyout is $59 million. Yep. It'd be hard to be. I mean, this kind of flies in the face of Florida State. So, well, we're so poor. We need to leave the ACC and greener pastures and more revenue in other conferences when they can just turn up $59 million like that when they want to get rid of a coach and pave over a problem.
Well, it's all gone downhill for Norvell since they missed out on the college football playoff. I mean, they were that close to making it. Teal, have you ever seen we're sitting here on Tuesday, October 21st, and there are all these high-profile jobs that are open and more to come. Have you ever seen a coaching carousel that I think is going to be this chaotic with this many high-profile jobs opening? I mean, it just seems like it's pure chaos, and it's going to be, and Virginia Tech obviously in the middle of it, but there are loads and loads and loads of more power conference jobs that might come open.
Correction, David. It doesn't seem like pure chaos. It is pure chaos. And yes, it's going to get crazier. And what makes it especially unprecedented is that it's such a stark contrast to last season when only 5 power conference jobs opened, only 3 in season, and now we already have 7 power conference jobs, and it's not even Halloween. And last year the thinking was, well, we're going to save money because we have this rev share coming. We don't know how we're going to navigate it. And now that rev share is here and the House settlement's in place, I don't know if schools feel a little bit of arrogance. We've got this figured out, which I think is foolish. But now they're just like, you got to win, and you got to win now. And it's not what did you do for me last year. It's what did you do last week. I mean, it's literally a week-to-week proposition in the sport and with job security. The folks who root for karma are undoubtedly amused that since suing the ACC, the Seminoles are 1 in 10.
One of them sitting on the set
In ACC. No, it's.
I don't even know who you're talking about. It could be any
in
of
a
us.
word. Oh no, it's and hey, I'm raising. It's glorious. It truly.
I mean, between that and between what's going on in Carolina, NC State could come open. Davo's I mean, Dabo's in a little bit of hot water himself. Brian Kelly. I mean, it's just like, it just seems everywhere you look, somebody's on a hot seat somewhere. And I just don't think we've ever, you said unprecedented, that's a really good word to use. We've never had something like this before in college football.
Well, the one year, a couple years ago, when Lincoln Riley leaves Oklahoma for USC and Brian Kelly leaves Notre Dame for LSU. I mean, those were the ones that when they happened in succession, everybody like, holy smokes. But remember, they didn't set off the dominoes that a lot of folks anticipated, because Oklahoma went and hired a coordinator in Brent Venables, and Notre Dame promoted from within with Marcus Freeman. So the dominoes didn't happen. But guys, we've talked about the jobs that are open or that might open because of terminations. But now you read all these lists and such. Could Lane Kiffin leave Ole Miss for Florida? Could Eli Drinkwitz leave Missouri for Florida? What's going to happen with Matt Rule in Nebraska? Andy mentioned Matt Campbell at Iowa State. Might he get a job? If Florida State opens, Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State feels like a natural there. SMU, Rhett Lashley to Arkansas. He's an alum. It could get. It will make your head spin, and I don't know how much, if at all, it would complicate Virginia Tech's search. But to Andy's point, if they could somehow get James Franklin into an interview situation in Blacksburg and close that deal, man, the sooner the better.
Yeah, another one that could leave, and I know you talked about it last week, is you don't think he's going to leave Duke, but it's Manny Diaz. The one thing that I want to bring up that I'm curious to get your thoughts, and even you guys' thoughts too, in the rev sharing era, where $20.5 million are allocated to each school, how much of that is going to basketball at Duke? And how much of that could that affect Manny Diaz's football situation, where he says, okay, if I'm getting X amount of money, I could go here, whether it's Virginia Tech, Penn State, Florida State, wherever, and I would have a better chance of competing because of the rev sharing aspect compared to other places.
I think what Duke lacks in rev share, Carter, and obviously Duke is going to devote more of its rev share to basketball than most any other school. But Duke can then make up for it on the sidecar NIL. And that's what they did with Darian Mensah. And he has proven to be a very wise investment. I think he's completing over 70% of his passes, and his numbers are off the charts. Now they've given away some games, most recently Saturday against Georgia Tech, but that certainly wasn't on Mensah. But those percentages of the rev share, they get down to $1 million here or $1 million there, whereas on the NIL front, you can more than make up that difference.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think he's well supported.
Yeah.
I mean, for Duke football, like, I think Duke has basically said, we're going to support you. And I know they lost a close one, or was close for a while, against Georgia Tech, but he's in a pretty good situation there, I think.
Also, there's another basketball school out there that's doing pretty well, Indiana. They're figuring out how to make this rev share thing work. Now, I guess their basketball program needs to pick up the pace to keep up with stuff, but they're doing all right with that.
You think that's a big contract they just gave out to Kurt Cignetti?
He had a big contract already.
Yeah.
And talking with Mike Neislich about this, he's like, they just added again like $2 million a year on this whole thing. I think that illustrates to me why this whole, the SCORE Act and Save College Sports, is like, when the players get some money, all of a sudden the world is falling. It's like the Indiana football coach is making $11.9 million a year. And these athletic departments are running to Congress, asking them to save them from themselves, private equity in the Big Ten. Like, hopefully common sense won out, and that's not actually going to go through. But I think I saw one of the Michigan Regent, or one of it's like, you can't borrow your way out of a spending problem. And these schools still have a spending problem. They didn't look inward when this whole thing happened. And we have a new $20.5 million line item on our budgets. Maybe we should refigure how we allocate some of this money and maybe not pay administrators and coaches as much. And they go, no, we're actually going to pay them even more. And then, whine and moan about athletes getting paid. It's become so tired, in my opinion, that, Cignetti's making $11.9 million. In the rev share for what Indiana has, 14 million for the football team together. So he's making as much as the rev share. I know there's NIL on top of that stuff, but no NFL coach makes as much as all the players combined. So why are we still talking about this in the way that people always talk about these things? It just bothers me. I had to get it off my chest.
Well, and all fair points. In the really rich part, pun absolutely intended, is college sports running to Congress, which has been shut down for how long now? Because
they've got their house in order. I'm sure they're going to come to the rescue.
Yeah, please, of all places.
Teel, you got we were talking about it before we came on. You were in Harrisonburg this weekend. ODU JMU. Bob Chesney is a hot name some places. What were your thoughts just on how JMU performed? Another game holding an opponent below 300 yards of total offense, and it seems like, I'm just curious your thoughts on Chesney. He seems like he's doing a terrific job there and continues to get that team to just perform really well.
It's not just Chesney; it's your boy Bob Chesney. That's what you have to say when you're talking to Teel.
Your boy Bob Chesney.
He's got really nice hair.
He does have nice hair.
Yes, and I am on the Bob Chesney bandwagon. I know Chris was tweeting about this, apparently from Champs during the game on Saturday, but the second half adjustments that Chesney and his staff are coming up with are just uncanny. Guys, I wrote it down, so please excuse me as I look to my notes to make sure I get the numbers right. JMU has won 5 straight games. And in that winning streak, the Dukes have outscored opponents in the second half 101-10. 3 consecutive second half shutouts. They haven't allowed 300 yards in a game, as David referenced. And oh, by the way, Old Dominion had 275 in the first half Saturday. On Old Dominion's first 4 drives, 277 yards. On its ensuing 8 drives, 8 yards. That, my boys, is what we call making adjustments. And Chesney talked about it post-game. He said, we believe we have enough schemes in our playbook that we are going to find something to slow you down. We may need some time to get there, but we're going to find it. And they did. Against you guys saw Colton Joseph up close and personal at Lane Stadium. That kid is a quarterback now. He can chuck it, he can run it, and he's going to get paid next year. If he's still in Norfolk next season, I'm going to be very surprised, because that young man's going to have options, and more lucrative options than what Old Dominion can offer him. But James Madison just smothered him in the second half. And Chesney hired a really good defensive coordinator in Colin Hitchler. He was at Alabama. He was co-DC at Alabama last year in Kalen DeBoer's first season. And he worked under Luke Fickell, actually, at Cincinnati when the Bearcats went to the CFP. And Marcus Freeman was the defensive coordinator on that staff. So it's an interesting group of assistants that Chesney has assembled. What he hasn't done, and Andy referenced this, he's never had to really weather a storm. The guy's had one losing season in 13 years as a head coach, and that was 5-6 out of the chute at Holy Cross. And I think the next year they won 11 games. It's the only time he's had a losing season. And oh, by the way, this is his 13th year as a head coach, and he's 44.
That's why I like him more than people like Alex Golish or even Sumrall, who doesn't have that length of history as a head coach. I mean, having done it for over a decade like that and winning at every stop, that feels very Dave Clawson-like. Clawson was a program builder, and he took over some lousy programs in his career and built them up. I'm not sure the state of all these programs Chesney took over were quite like Clawson, but
they were bad.
They were pretty bad.
Were they as bad as Clawson? I mean, Clawson took over
Chris,
some winless
Chris
teams,
detailed it in his article. I mean,
Okay.
we're talking about programs that won like 3 games, like 4 years leading up to
that
Chesney.
to me is even more impressive about this whole thing. It's like,
until he got to JMU.
JMU was rolling.
He took over ready-made.
But again, I go back to the VCU basketball thing. I think maybe that's just what JMU is in this state. And if they're just churning out quality head coaches like that, hey, get on the assembly line here. Don't overcomplicate this thing. I feel like Chesney, I'd probably put him in my top 5 of candidates. And there's a lot of bigger name guys, bigger resumes. If you want somebody on an upswing, you want somebody who's a program builder, I think Chesney would be a very, very good choice.
Can I get everybody's thoughts on this then with Chesney? Everybody talks about his lack of Power 4 experience. That is not the biggest concern to me. Now, this is a branch off of that, but it is his ability to put together a competitive staff in the ACC because of his connections within the coaching industry. Would that concern you at all if Virginia Tech hired him? We can go round table. Go ahead, Andy.
I mean, isn't your hiring prowess as good as your bank account or your bankroll? I mean, if Virginia Tech is going to fund this thing as well as they say they're going to, I think you'll be able to go out and find some quality coordinators.
Okay.
And, also the highest price ones are always not the best.
Yeah.
Go out and find people that you can work with that are good, that are in demand, and try to keep them with the salaries. I'm not as concerned about that as other people might be.
Okay.
I think Kurt Signetti showed exactly what you can do when you've got guys you trust on your staff. I mean, most of his assistants are guys from the D2 level that he brought with him, right? We're talking about a guy in Chesney who's won everywhere, and Teel was just talking about his defensive coordinator. I mean, it seems like he knows how to evaluate and hire the right staff that fits his program. Teel, what do you think?
Oh, the Signetti comparison, David, is spot on. He basically took the entire James Madison staff and a lot of the roster to Indiana and flipped it immediately. So there would be no worry from me on Bob Chesney's ability to assemble a quality staff to take to the next level. Now, does that mean he's the perfect guy for the job? Again, I don't know. It would all come down to the one-on-one interaction for me. But I think Virginia Tech would be foolish not to at least vet him, gauge his interest, and then perhaps pursue a conversation with him.
All right, let's step aside and hear from one of our sponsors, State Farm, here on Talking with Teel. Switching is easy. We do it all the time. We switch on the lights. We switch TV channels. Some of us switch partners while square dancing. Well, that's a stretch. But what's not a stretch is how you can switch and save with State Farm. In fact, a group of State Farm agents that support TechSideline.com can switch you over to State Farm so you can start saving today. These State Farm agents and their team are ready to welcome you to the State Farm neighborhood. Check out Tech Sideline for the agent in your area. It's easy to switch and save. Just give them a call. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And a big thank you to State Farm, our presenting sponsor of Talking with Teel. We're 7 episodes in to Talking with Teel, and State Farm is one of our sponsors. That's pretty cool. So anyway, let's get into candidates. I told myself that I'm going to challenge myself pretty much every single week with 2 different candidates to present to the group here. And one of them Chris wrote about. I'm going to start with him. How about PJ Fleck at Minnesota? Sky Umar rowed the boat. Go ahead, Teel. What's your thoughts on him at Virginia Tech?
I texted Andy about him last night. I said, "You're a Big Ten guy," and it's a group text, and Mike Niselik's on it too. And now that Mike covers the Big Ten, PJ Fleck is again. he's like Chesney. He's done it at multiple places, done it at programs that necessarily haven't had a ton of success, Western Michigan, and now Minnesota. I was listening to the College Football Inquirer pod the other day, and I forget which panelist it was. I don't know if it was Ross Dellinger or not, but one of them said that it's kind of common knowledge in the industry that PJ Fleck may be looking for an escape hatch from Minnesota just because he's been there for so long and thinks maybe that the program has peaked and he's run his course, and he self-aware enough to realize that coaches have a limited shelf life. But I think the resume is very impressive. Whether the personality and the whole row the boat thing and the affinity or maybe even the need to be center stage would work in Blacksburg is a different question.
I'll give 2 words with PJ Fleck. Buzz Williams. He's got very Buzz Williams-like qualities. And I say that in both an endearing and sort of, nasty way in saying about that. I mean, I think he's an excellent coach, PJ Fleck. I also think he is very much about the temple of PJ. Like he is, the temple of Buzz was always a thing. Everything came back to Buzz and team coach Buzz and all this stuff. And he knew he had an expiration date and all this stuff. And I feel like Fleck is a little bit like that. The whole row the boat thing. He's got sort of this thing that travels from school. If he goes to the next school, I mean, he could go to UCLA. He'll be like, row the boat to UCLA. It's like, where? There's no, where are you rowing the boat in the Pacific? Like, I think that's great when you first get to a place. And people are on team coach Fleck right from the start, and I think it wears over time a little bit. My 2 brothers, older brothers, are graduates of Minnesota. They were rowing the boat right away. They were all about it. This is back when the Wisconsin-Minnesota rivalry was good, when Wisconsin actually competed. So we go back and forth on texts, and Wisconsin beat them one time, and I sent them like a rowboat like sinking. I'm like, row the boat on this one. I will not be sending any text this year. This will not work out in my favor. But 9 years in, I feel like Fleck is kind of like Dave Doran, where it's like you sort of hit your head on the ceiling of what you can accomplish at a place like Minnesota and what you can at a place like NC State. And if you can't elevate at that point, it's probably time to get out and find somewhere else that you can start new, reset the clock on the whole thing. And I think, I go back to Buzz Williams. Buzz Williams was like that. He goes to a place for 5 years. He realizes that there's an expiration date on his time there, and then he moves on to the next place. But he's a good coach, and I think Fleck is a good coach and can do pretty well here.
And guys, that may be the new normal, where you're lucky to get 5 or 6 good years out of a coach, and then it's time to move on. I mean, I think we all understand that the days of someone like Coach Beamer being there for almost 3 decades are over. But I think decade-long tenures are going to be few and far between as we move forward in this era where it's so volatile every season.
How about Clark Lee at Vanderbilt? Probably a long shot, but I do want to bring him up. Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. Any sort of fit Teel at Virginia Tech?
I would want to see Clark Lee sans Diego Pavia and Jerry Kill and that whole New Mexico State influx. I wonder if this is sustainable at Vanderbilt. I'm not doubting that Clark Lee can coach a little bit. And the story is remarkable that this is their highest ranking in the AP poll since 1947. But how much of it is just Pavia? And not only that, the only reason that Pavia is eligible is because he sued for yet another season. And it's just, I wonder if it's just this one one shiny moment that's going to fade pretty quickly.
You were saying that like Pavia is not going to continue to sue the NCAA. He's never graduated. He's going to be 54 years old and still playing college football on like another lawsuit, another injunction. My thought was quickly, I have similar thoughts with that. My other thought is like, do you get the package? Do you get Jerry Kill? Do you get the OC,
Tim Beck?
Because I think that whole operation has really been a reason for the success. You know, also Clark Lee, that's his, alma mater.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt. I think it'd be tough to peel him away there. And if you did, it might be for an opportunity within the SEC. My other thought is like, hey, does Jerry Kill just want to coach? Does he want to? Like, I don't think he wants to. I think he's in a spot with his health that he doesn't want all the responsibilities of being a head coach. Nashville, obviously, great medical facilities and stuff like that there. So I'm sure that factors into his whole thing. But man, that's too bad because, I think he's a great coach. Yeah. Like just to lead a program, I kind of wish he just had that. You saw how crazy he was at New Mexico State. He's like wearing sombreros and like he's got tattoos and stuff from his time there. He's like getting into it with the athletic director and stuff. I was like, man, that guy is an ornery SOB. I love watching him coach. Like there's just something about him that is just fun to watch.
Andy, I was at the Conference USA Championship game a couple years ago at Liberty against when the Flames played New Mexico State and Diego Pavia and Jerry. And little did I know that I was watching the future of college football, of Power 4 college football. It was. I think back often to that night in Lynchburg.
I think Clark Lee's a good coach. But yeah, I would like to see him without Diego Pavia too, because I think Diego Pavia has that whole operation so well run, works so well together, but you take out the centerpiece and what does it become? And we haven't really seen that. So, but maybe we will never find out because maybe Diego Pavia will continue to get eligibility.
It will.
They can bring him to Virginia Tech. There you go. Problem solved.
He's the new Hunter Carpenter.
Yes.
You get like 8, 9, 10 years.
Does how Cal looked on Friday, Florida State on Saturday, make you feel better about Virginia Tech's chances to get another win this season, Teel?
Yes. Aren't the Hokies
Yes,
favorites?
yes, they are.
3.5.
And it went up. It's like 4.5.
Oh my!
It went up. Yeah. I was. And hey, Cal is a what? 2 feet away from losing to North Carolina. If that receiver takes another step into the end zone, maybe that's a touchdown instead of a fumble, and the Bears lose at home to Carolina. And how bad of a loss would that seem? I kind of like Tech's chances on Friday night. Cal coming back east. Short week for the Bears. The Hokies off their first open date of the season. I think it really sets up well for them.
Could have gone worse for Carolina. It could have gone worse. But yeah, brutal ending. You guys get anything else?
Yeah, I think I wrote down I wanted to ask Teel just about the state of college football. You've got Indiana number 2. You got Georgia Tech number 7. Vanderbilt's number 10. Virginia's number 16. I don't know if there's like a common thread, but I just think all of these teams really succeeded in the offseason, in the transfer portal. Like if that might be the common thread about they just went about and got the right guys in the program. But I think it's just crazy. It gives me throws me back to like 2007, that chaotic season when it was like USF and Kansas, and it's like it just seems like it's
Boston
easy.
College.
It just seems like it's easy for a lot of teams that haven't necessarily been powerhouses to come in and win now.
Well, it's a couple things. It's absolutely investment. You mentioned portal acquisitions. Indiana goes out and gets Mendoza in the portal from Cal, and UVA. We've talked a lot about the investment that Carla Williams and the donors there made in giving Tony Elliott the resources to get players. But it takes more than that. If it was just getting dudes in the portal, Florida State wouldn't be in the straits that it's in. You have to, as a coach, somehow find a way, and some years you're going to fail miserably, and others you will succeed wildly. You have to get annually a disparate group of players who really have no connection with one another, who didn't come in at the same time, and having, to Andy's point about coaches, weathered a storm together. You have to somehow get them to mesh together as a cohesive team. And I think that's what Tony Elliott has done at Virginia this season. And I think it's what Curt Cignetti has done masterfully at Indiana, although that core, that transfer core, the JMU group, were familiar with one another. And it's what Clark Lee has done at Vanderbilt, and what others have done in other places. But it's such an interesting skill set that I keep coming back to that phrase that coaches have to have now. It's so much different than it was back in 5 years ago, let alone 10 or 15.
I think it's fascinating that, we keep hearing that college football is this existential crisis right now, and it's on the verge of becoming something that we just don't want. And I'm looking at this, and listen, I'm a small market fan. I like the Twins. I hate the Yankees, that kind of stuff. I like watching these teams that haven't been traditional powers rise up and have a chance. This is awesome that Indiana is number 2 in Indiana football is number 2 in the country. Like, I covered a game there in 1999. And I think Antoine Randall L. was the quarterback. Wisconsin still beat the crap out of them in that game. It wasn't close, despite how good Randall L. was in that game. I never thought Indiana would be number 2 in the country at any point. Virginia Tech has possibly played 2 playoff teams already. Georgia Tech and Vanderbilt. How strange is that? Everybody would have, beginning of the year, you said, your 2 playoff teams you're playing is South Carolina, Florida State, or Miami. Those, and Miami still might get there at this point. This feels like it is good for the sport, and you're bringing in all these teams that historically have never really had a chance. It's always been, you've got to recruit at this blue blood level and the blue chip ratio, and if you don't have a certain number of 5 stars and 4 stars, you have no chance to even compete. And then you look at Indiana's roster and you go, they sure look pretty good against all those 5 stars that Oregon had. They look like they can go out there and compete against these other kind of teams. This could be a very fun end of the season, and I can't wait to see these teams get into a playoff situation.
Yeah.
And then it's every team for themselves there. You can't hide behind your recruiting ranking at that point. You got to produce at that point. And this is not to discount. Alabama and Georgia are still there, number 4, number 5. Ohio State's still there, number 1. But there's some other teams in there that. It feels like it has democratized the process of this whole thing and brought a lot more teams and fan bases into the fold. And, we're talking in the BCS era in the original 4-team playoff. It was always going to be really hard for Virginia Tech to get into that scenario. Why couldn't Virginia Tech get into a 12-team? Indiana's done it. Georgia Tech's about to do it. Vanderbilt's on the verge of doing it. If these schools and programs,
Virginia could
Virginia
do
could do
it.
it. This is so many teams have figured this out to do that. Surely Virginia Tech could. So if you're a Hokies fan, I feel like you look at this season, it has to give you a great amount of hope for what could be possible at a program if you just get your stuff together.
Yeah, and as much as we all used to embrace coastal chaos, we could be looking at some absurd tiebreakers in the ACC to figure out who's in Charlotte the first Saturday in December. You could have SMU, Georgia Tech, and Virginia all 8-0, and then it would come down to the combined conference record of your league opponents. That would be the tiebreaker that would decide which 2 teams made Charlotte. You could have a handful of teams at 7-1, and then I don't even want to think about trying to untangle that.
This is, I think
League's too big.
I think they've erred in the 9-game schedule. I think they needed to have that last week of the season before the championship game be a semifinal round and have the best 4 teams put forward and advance from there. Because I think there are just too many teams that you miss.
Yeah.
Within the conference
Yeah.
to do it with a tiebreaker. Even if you go to 9 games, I think you're still going to have that problem.
Yeah, league's too big. League's too big, but we'll see how everything shakes out. Anyway, Teal, appreciate your time. I know we got to wrap up. I assume you're doing the Virginia Tech UVA doubleheader this weekend? Blacksburg and Chapel Hill?
I am. You assume correctly. On darn little sleep, thanks to the ACC with that noon kick Saturday in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, we'll see. Second Belichick game for David Teel, I believe. Correct? You were at the opener against TCU? Heck yeah, you were.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, appreciate your time. I look forward to talking next week. And basketball season's almost here too, so lots to talk about. So we appreciate it.
Sure. Enjoyed it.
For the Virginia Sports Hall of Famer, David Teel, for David Cunningham, Andy Bitter, Nick Brown, I'm Carter Hill saying so long from Blacksburg. We'll talk to you very soon.